Call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence for the unexpected death of one of our teachers, beloved teachers, Mary Ellen Guba, who taught in this district for 33 years, high school, middle school, special education teacher, also president, vice president, and treasurer of the ETA SRP union. Mary Ellen always went above and beyond for all the children of this district and also for the community members. She will be sorely, sorely missed. And right now the angels are smiling because they got a special one up there. So we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you, and I will adjourn tonight's meeting in her honor. Call for a motion to accept the minutes of the January 12, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries unanimous. Willie, you good?
Yes, thank you.
Public forum for this evening? No one? We'll move on to presentations. I will call to the podium Mr. Kermit Meyer, our athletic director, to discuss the fall and spring sports. Thank you, Kermit, for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Test. Oh, good. We're all set. Thank you, President Patrician, Superintendent Wiles, for having me this evening to share some considerations with you as we attempt and discuss the options of fall 2 sports season and the spring season during this pandemic. As we go to the next slide, thank you, Mr. Napoli, for helping me with the transitions. So you all have copies of this, and you might have had a chance, I hope, to read through it. But in response to the pandemic, I'm going to share some specific guidance with you that's been shared with me by the Department of Health, both Ulster County and the New York State, as well as the New York State Public High School Athletic Association in Section 9. Both the Public High School Athletic Association and Section 9 have task force and have been working diligently throughout this year to provide information for schools and athletic directors on this topic. I thought the highlights would be the general considerations for all sports, facilities and social distancing, transportation, some specifics from Section 9 that we're a member of, and equipment. So under the considerations for all sports, you can see there 5 different bullets, and these are coming from the New York State Public High School Athletic Association. They provided guidance not only for the fall season, but for the winter, as well as the fall 2 and the spring seasons. And there will be an expectation that all the students, participants will practice washing hands and using hand sanitizer and doing that prior to all practices and games and throughout a practice and a contest as well. We're responsible for ensuring that the facilities are properly sanitized, and I have plans in place for that. Hand sanitizer and additional masks will be available for practices and games for both coaches and athletes. Coaching and custodial staff members will clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces and equipment as appropriate, and that's in similar line with what they do during the day when we have students here as well when they're on campus with us. There's a high expectation, obvious expectation, no hugging, high fives, fist bumps, or shaking of hands during practices and competitions. There will be no captains meetings prior to there will be no interfacing with the officials and things of that nature. Those are all outlined as well. At our practice and competition sites, only authorized personnel will be permitted, and staff includes athletes, coaches, medical personnel, and officials. Okay, we go to the next slide, facilities and social distancing. The fitness room and the weight room can be used. It does not restrict, the guidance doesn't restrict the use of this, but as long as we follow appropriate protocols, we should be able to use that facility safely And that includes the number of athletes that are in there, making sure they're masked, and that it's, it is supervised, but keeping the numbers to the allowable number. Locker rooms can be used. I would say that most schools, most ADs that I've been working with are not using them. And I don't see us having to need to use them at all, but they are available if we need to use them. So we would work that out if if there was an expectation of someone wanted to use them. Ensuring student athletes are following all the prescribed requirements, and we develop signage and monitoring to ensure the athletes are doing what they need to. The last bullet on this page comes right from the guidance, and it talks real specifically about unless there's a need to scrimmage and play in a close, game-like condition, as much as possible, the coaches are to have athletes be 6 feet apart or greater. We would still have them masked and to try to do individual or potentially small-sided types of skill drills and things of that nature. But it does say that if a shorter distance requires, it says, or the core activity requires a shorter distance. So that's the practice, the playing, the scrimmaging. That would be part of what we would be doing. That's part of what other schools have been doing throughout, the fall. Just as a note, before I go to transportation, I think it's important to share, we were one of 4 sections that did not offer fall sports. So just throughout the state, the other sections did offer a fall sports season for the moderate to low risk. Sections 8 and 11, Long Island, those 2 sections, ourselves, Section 9, and the Binghamton area, Section 4. All those other schools did have kids on campus, and they did offer moderate and low risk sports in the fall season. Many of those sections are also offering moderate and low risk for the winter season as well. So I'll touch upon that a little bit later. You might have some questions, but I just wanted to give you a sense of there's other sections across the state that have had some successes, and I've talked with some ADs, and they've had some positive experiences for kids. So transportation, some things that are important for us to consider, that students who are receiving remote instruction will be expected to get themselves here to campus for practices or games. And talking with the superintendent, we believe, we can offer the 445 bus once they're here, similar to what we've done in the past if we go forward. So that'll still continue as a practice we've had in the past. For away contests, students and coaches will still need to wear masks and 1 seat per person. And in talking with the transportation department, a large bus is about 65 or 66 passenger. We can safely fit roughly 22 people on that, which would include coaches, and it would include the athletes and any other members of this travel trip. And due to weather and field conditions, contests may be scheduled at school districts that have turf fields. So Rondout has reached out to us. That's close. They're close. We may have the opportunity to use their field. But in addition, other schools, like we may have to, if there's a potential contest, and let's say, for example, we're scheduled maybe to play a varsity soccer game, boys or girls, with SPAC and Kill. If it's supposed to be our home game and we can't host that game, SPAC and Kill, for example, now also has turf, and we might just go there so that we potentially could still play. And I'll talk a little bit about that. All right, the next 2 slides are really some specifics from the task force of Section 9 and some guidelines and expectations that they prepared for us and shared with all athletic directors across the section. So prior to entering any athletic venue, all the athletes and any support personnel and coaches will be subject to additional temperature checks by the site personnel at either their own home facility or when they're traveling to another site. The visiting team is expected and has to provide a roster to the host school of all those that are in attendance with their pertinent contact information for contact tracing purposes. This roster will indicate that each student has answered the Section 9 health screening questionnaire and has been temperature scanned prior to their departure from their own campus. Visiting athletes will be temperature scanned again before entering the athletic venue at the site that they're going to. Officials have, through the officials organizations, they are expected to arrive dressed and complete a Section 9 health screening form as well. and they are also subject to temperature scans prior to entering any venue. The next slide is the next three bullets. We put this bullet in there in the event that the Section 9 allows spectators to attend events. So right now in the winter season, for those programs that are being run by schools in our section right now that have moderate and low risk sports like bowling and indoor track and field and things like that, spectators are not allowed. That's a Section 9 policy. It is more restrictive than state guidance, but that is acceptable. So I put this bullet in here for the fall 2 and the spring, that in the event that they do allow spectators, temperature scans and health screening questionnaires will be mandatory. Seating for spectators will be separated to meet social distancing requirements, and family members will be permitted to sit next to each other, and masks will be required. As of today, we don't have that guidance for the fall 2 season. The task force at the Section 9 level is going to meet again here in the next week or two, and prior to March 1st, we'll get more information about spectators. And then it just simply says on the last two bullets that any Section 9 contest, played at a member school will follow that district's policy. And if it's played at a neutral venue, we will follow the venue's policy or the public high school policy, whichever is more restrictive. Next, some considerations regarding equipment. Athletes are to wear their own appropriate clothing during activities, not share clothing. They'll be responsible for cleaning their clothes and towels after each session and contest. Next, there will be no sharing of water bottles, towels, face masks, helmets, headgear, any other equipment. We'll provide sport-specific balls for each athlete if we can do that as much as possible. The exception would be when they're during scrimmage or gameplay. Those types of activities during a practice, they would not have their own individual ball or equipment. Each workout or practice session will have a centrally located water jug so they can refill water, so they can have water for hydration. Hand sanitizers will be provided, wipes will be provided, so that during a practice session and during a contest, we can use those as appropriate. In response to the governor's okay for us to potentially use offer high-risk sports, it was on the basis of what the county, each individual county across the states had prescribed. And for us, these are three key things that are important for us that we have to follow in an effort to offer high-risk sports. So that would be a Board of Ed resolution permitting the resumption of play for high-risk sports, that each athlete will and their parent will sign a code of conduct prior to starting participation in any sport, and then the acknowledgement, COVID-19 acknowledgement and assumption of risk would also be signed. That was guidance shared with us by the county that we had to share and have ready if we do offer any level of athletics. And the last two slides are really going to talk about what our fall 2 and spring offerings are. And for us, the fall 2 season is scheduled for March 1st through April 17th, roughly about 6 or 7 weeks. The two sports that are high risk for us here in Ellenville are football and volleyball. The other sports are considered moderate or low risk. And that's our field hockey program, boys soccer, girls soccer, cross country, and girls tennis for the fall. And you'll note when I go to the next slide, typically we have boys golf in the fall, but because of weather and the availability of obviously golf courses, they've moved it to the traditional spring season just for this year. So that would mean next year, if we're back to normal, which I hope we are, boys golf would be in the fall again. But there's our spring offerings: softball, baseball, outdoor track and field, varsity and modified, as well as boys tennis and girls golf. And then the only change would be adding boys golf. And that is scheduled for the third Monday starting in April 19th. And I put June 23rd. That end date, I only put that there because I'm not sure exactly yet if Regents exams are going to be facilitated or not. And if Regents exams are not facilitated, the section and the leagues are planning on trying to use as much of the available time right up to graduation. So I put that as a Wednesday, just as a benchmark date. But that could be different. Again, once I know more and we know more if regents are going to be facilitated, that could change. So that gives you a lot of information. I have a lot more details that I've been reading through all our guidance plans, several pages, but I thought this information would be very helpful, at least to get people thinking about this opportunity to give something for our kids. And, I'm certainly happy to answer questions. And if I don't have the answer, I'll certainly get it to you. But
Okay, board members.
I am prepared to do that.
John?
Thank you, Kermit, for the presentation. I have a few questions. so
Sure, go ahead.
Bear
Thank
with me, please.
Yeah.
It seems like looking through the slides that you gave us, there's a ton of precautions, safety measures, and restrictions. Can we meet all of these?
So I think we can. It's going to be very hard in some constraints or some aspects to do that, because what's going to drive that difficulty is the number of kids that may sign up and try out. We may not offer some programs because there may not be a large registration. So I do believe we can, Trustee Burns. I do think we can. I think the coaches are prepared to do that. And, we certainly have to be very vigilant with our student athletes and share with them what the expectations are so that we can continue to, offer the safest possible environment.
On the fall 2 season, what is the normal starting date for the spring season if it was a regular school year? Approximate.
Yeah, great question. So the normal spring season would start around the second Monday in March for the varsity and JV. Used to be a few years back, it started the first Monday and they pushed that back. So for example, this year, if we had a traditional spring season, I believe it would be March 8th. And that season would last from this first Monday in March through the end of May, early June.
So it's not March 1st is not like exceedingly earlier, but we're playing a bunch of sports that would normally be in the fall, and April is not warm around here either. So I'm looking at those sports on field hockey and soccer and cross country and tennis. There might be a lot of cancellations due to weather.
There could potentially be a lot of cancellations.
And no
correct.
fans at those venues either.
So in terms of the fall 2 or the spring, the section hasn't finalized their policy regarding spectators.
I know they said the spring you could go to a baseball game or a softball game. The field hockey, you could be 500 yards from the field there. They're not allowing fans right now, though.
Like I said, the section hasn't determined that for the fall 2 season. They've only done that for the winter season that's currently being held.
And then the last thing I had was the assumption of risk. Can a parent legally sign away the safety of their child?
So that's a good question.
I'm going to defer to Superintendent
I think
Wiles.
that's a good question. The assumption of risk, the problem we have with that is the health department's not going to allow us to proceed unless athletes sign it. So whether they can or not, it's just an acknowledgement. So maybe they can't sign away their rights, but at least it's an acknowledgement of what the risk is. So they're fully, informed about, what the risks are.
I was just concerned because I don't believe it shields us from legal action if something untoward happened to an athlete.
We can get a legal opinion on that.
Okay.
Can I add to that, Mr. Trustee
Sure.
Burns? So again, this was every specific DOH from each county. So I am aware that other counties have not had that as part of their expectations. I can't give you a specific, but I'm talking with other ADs. I know some counties, like in other parts of the state, don't have that expectation.
And then finally, on the high-risk sports. So it's our choice whether to have high-risk sports according to whoever designated these. I mentioned to you when you came in, I understand wrestling, but calling volleyball high risk, but soccer, as I mentioned before, on a throw-in, people are right up back to chest, and when the ball's hit to the goalie, everybody's rushing the goalie and stuff. That was a state designation, which is high risk.
Right, and as well, that was also supported at that time. The National Federation of High School Sports also had part of that designation and shared it with the states. Now, there was a very recent article that I haven't read the whole thing yet, but there may be some changes to that, but I don't know if that's going to come into play at this time.
Thank you.
If that does come into play, I'll certainly share it with you.
Thank
but
you.
You're welcome.
Jody?
Did I hear you correctly saying that the locker rooms will not be used?
We can use them if we want to. I'm planning not using them. If we don't
So-
have to use them, I really don't want to.
So where will our athletes be changing and keeping their personal belongings for practices?
So the plan would be that they would come dressed. If they're already here on campus, we could let them use those kids could use it because they would have to change here, but that would be a fewer number. The kids that are coming, if they're remote learners, they would be able to change at home and leave from here without, and change and shower at home. So the goal is to restrict the proximity and the number of kids in the locker room as much as possible. And I support that because I've had a lot of conversations with other ADs that are currently doing some moderate and low risk sports this winter, and they're really not using the locker rooms hardly at all.
Anybody else?
I just had a question on the coaches and the appointments. Will we have signups in advance of us making a final decision whether or not to hold a particular spot? In the past, we've had trouble with numbers, our enrollment's declining. So we'd have advance notice of your recommendations on 5 kids signed up for girls soccer. We're probably not going to run that if that was the case.
Right. So the registration process has to start 30 days before the start of the season.
Okay.
And I appreciate the board's support. The family ID is going well. There's a number of students and their families that have signed up. And so that's been ongoing since last Monday. And so, yes, it's very possible we might not be able to offer a team because there may not be enough student athletes registered.
Okay.
And I think we had talked, right, Superintendent Wiles, about potentially at the next board meeting
Yes.
to,
We're also looking at our eligibility rules. Second quarter's done, and we'll have an eligibility list based on the current policy. And
Correct.
We'll know more about the numbers with that too.
Anybody else?
At the 23rd. Yep.
So on the 23rd, there'll be a resolution as to whether or not we want to proceed with the sports program. Mr. Moyer, thank you for coming in, and thank you for sharing with that.
You're welcome.
information.
Can I share just one more thing?
Yes.
If you're comfortable. So in talking with other ADs, as they're also preparing for the fall 2 season, that's the one that's imminent, coming up soon. I would really like to advocate. I know this is a challenging decision for you guys as a board and for us as a district. But there is conversations amongst other school districts and athletic directors, if we can at least maybe do varsity only and give something for our seniors, that would be something that I would support. I know I've shared that with the superintendent, and I think that would be a real positive. And I really feel we could really, for those 5 or 6 sports, we could really run a safe program during this time. So I just wanted to share that out.
Is there any talk about testing students?
There was a discussion at the superintendent's level. We had requested that from the Department of Health. I'll follow up with them tomorrow. We have not heard back.
Anybody else? Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Moyer.
President Patrician, thank you. Superintendent Wiles, thank you. It was great to be here tonight. Thank you for listening.
Move on to reports, information, and correspondence. I have nothing for this evening. Board members? John?
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know, of course, last year due to the COVID, we postponed our Hall of Fame inductions. We're going to do those inductions hopefully next fall with a full schedule of classes and all. But that there's still time to nominate for this year. We had a little bit of a big class come in last year. I think there was 1 extra person. So we'd like to get so the people in the public, if you want to nominate somebody to the Hall of Fame, you just contact Mr. Moyer or fill out the form online and get them in. We'll be looking at that in the next month and making a decision on who will be in the class of 2021.
Thank you. Anybody else? Board membership? Wayne?
After looking at social media the last couple of days and the outcrying of support and love for Mary Ellen, I think I should just say a few words briefly. Our staff, whether it's a clerical person, custodian, security, a teacher, administration, they affect lives here. And a lot of times they don't even know how they're doing it and in what aspect. And, you know, when you look at all of the comments on social media about Mary Ellen and what she did for our students here and for the community, you can really see, you know, what school districts and staff members do for kids. You know, the love, the support, just being there for them in their bad times and good times. And Mary Ellen was a perfect example of that. You know, 33 plus years ago, Mary Ellen was teaching her first class here, her first year, and I was volunteering in her classroom, and she told me, "You have two paths, Wayne: right path or the left path. You know, which one are you going to do? It's your choice. I can help you. I'll guide you." And you know, I'm really happy that our friendship started there because she guided the kind of person I am, and who I became as an individual. And it's pretty amazing when you see people, you know, and as a staff member, you have children that you teach here, and then you become godparents to their children. It really is a tribute to things that you've done, you know. And all through college, you keep up with me, as do many other staff members with students. You know, the point is going to be at the end, what our staff does for students here, above teaching them math and arithmetic and ELA and all these other things, you know. And, you know, making sure I was doing well in college and keep my head on straight. And I knew I had to, because she'd give me a kick in the ass if I didn't. You know, after college, really telling me, you really need to be involved in the community, do the right thing, give back. And, you know, again, really help guiding where I was going, even as an adult. And as a staff member to call, you know, she called me and say, "I need $50. You know, what school functions it for?" Okay, it's for a senior who doesn't have enough money to go on a trip. I mean, she always went above and beyond. And, you know, I'm really going to miss our friendship, the dinners. And there's a lot of staff members here that do those things. I just really want to thank all of them. I don't care if they're a custodian, if it's a copy person, administrator, all of our staff, for the most part, go above and beyond, and they need to be recognized for it. And she was just a great example of seeing, you know, how people do it. And I just want to thank our entire staff for going above and beyond every day for our students.
Thank you. Anybody else want to be heard on that? No? Okay. We'll move on to Superintendent Ms.
So
Wiles.
I have a few things this evening. I just want, since we missed the meeting on the 26th, just want to report out on our reopening of our 712. So our 712 students are back in the buildings for a few weeks now. They've been rotating cohort A, cohort B. It's really moving to see finally kids in the building almost a year later. It was unnatural before. We still have a number of students remote learning, and it's going okay. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. This remote learning, this COVID pandemic has had a significant impact on most of our children in one way or the other. And we have a lot of work to do when we get back to normal, which will hopefully be this September to some degree, to help our students along, whether it's socially, emotionally, or academically. We have a tall hill to climb, and we'll do it together. And we're not alone. All the districts are facing this, but it's finally nice to have all kids in the buildings. In that same vein, we're working on prioritizing, getting all of our, as the guidance from the state education department suggested, getting as many of our special ed students and our ENL students back in to cohort A and B, if we can do that safely. I know elementary's got a plan that they're hoping to implement by March 1st. And I know the middle school and the high school are working on those scenarios also. Next week, we'll have a budget workshop. In your packet, I did put some preliminary information in. The governor did release his executive budget, which is disappointing. There's portions of it we'll talk about next week. One of the things we're learning more and more about every day is the stimulus aid. We really don't have a lot of detail. There's some money that's allocated There's some STAR money that's taken away, and there's not a lot of direction and detail on what the stimulus money is. I do want to say that last year we had a rough year budgetarily. We had to make some significant cuts to the budget because the governor had said that there was going to be a good possibility that there was 20% aid cut. While there has been some dollars withheld, it's surely not 20% of the total amount. And we will be able to reallocate those funds in next year's budget and more reallocate and restore some. But we are going to look at what we have, what we lost, what the need is now for the students. So in the upcoming budget workshops, during the budget meetings to come, we'll be talking about what that looks like. But in your packets, you have the state aid runs by the county. These are all available online. I know Mr. Napoli on one of the links will put all of this information up as we go through it next week. But the plan right now is to have a reallocation / restoration of those funds for next year. I do want to say this. I think we have to move with caution. I also showed you a trend analysis of our fund balance over the last 10 years. We have been running operational deficits. We've been talking about that. We've had the audits, our annual audits reflect that. I think there's some confusion out, in the public on what those numbers are. And we did have, when the comptroller came in the last time, we did have about $12 million in allocated reserves that they thought was a bit much. But since that time, we have decreased those reserves to about $7 million. So we have decreased them, and we are continuing to use those to offset any operational deficits we have. And we've done that prior to last year to try to maintain what we could since the 2012 budget and restore where we could to, until COVID and this pandemic hit and wreaked havoc. So hopefully this coming for the 21-20 school year, we'll be able to start building back, and hopefully the stimulus funds will assist us. But until we get more details on what that is, one of the big concerns about, and I'll say this a lot, and I know that NICET has something out, that stimulus funding last year, the $675,000, that wasn't supplemental aid, that was supplanted. So our general fund foundation aid decreased, and we got a filler. And we're concerned about the stimulus aid, that our foundation aid isn't decreased and supplanted instead of supplemented. So we have to really watch that as we go forward. The last thing I want to talk about is at the next board meeting, I'll have a presentation, and we will be having a public hearing just so that we can get information out there. There's a letter that'll be going home to parents. There's been some initial internal discussions about a reconfiguration plan of the grades in the school. I do want to tell you, and we'll have those numbers on the 23rd. We've seen an incredible decrease in enrollment over the last 10, 20 years. Our enrollment right now is 1,565 approximately, which is down probably 200 students over the last 4 or 5 years. And the enrollment projections are that we're going to continue to decline. When you have declining resources and you have to staff up 3 buildings, sometimes we lose economies of scale and we're not as efficient. So we are looking at a grade reconfiguration also to take the elementary grade 6, move that down to the elementary school. We have the room, there will not be overcrowding. And we are going to have 7 and 8 merge with the existing high school for a junior senior high school. And with that plan, we should be able to provide additional resources and opportunities to our grade 7 and 8 students. in the long term with regard to planning, and sixth grade will have some additional instructional time and other opportunities. There will be some shared facility use for both the middle school, seventh and eighth grade. The plan is to keep them into the middle school building. That building is not closing. And PTAC, our new program that we had the presentation on by Mrs. White, that'll be housed in that building. We'll talk more about this on the 23rd. Mr. Spinelli is going to be the principal for the PTAC program and also have oversight over seventh and eighth grade. So I'll give you more details on how that looks. As a good summary, there'll be a resolution. The state education, this has to be submitted to the state education department. So we're not technically closing a building, we're just realigning our grade levels to two separate schools, but the facility and the building will be used. So that's to come on the 23rd also. And that is all I have tonight.
Thank you. Vince, could you share with us how much you've spent on, or if you need to get the figure on COVID this year, as far as safety
Sure.
equipment and everything? I mean, if you could bring it back to us the next meeting if you need.
No,
to.
I have the report. I presented it to the board. I just wanted to do just a quick math check on it. So give me 1 second.
President, while Mr. Napoli is searching, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Reverend Collins.
With the start back, when we started talking about it, the cohort was so that families kind of stayed together.
Yes.
How much struggle have we had since we came back this time because of different grades, different times?
So we've had some struggles with that, and we are trying to make some accommodations for those families. So with sixth grade, going back to the 6-12 schedule, in other words, they're coming in on really the high school schedule, the 7:45 schedule. We have had some students where it became a daycare issue because the sixth graders really help support those scenarios at home. So if parents send those students in, we've been trying to make accommodations during breakfast where they can have breakfast in the middle school, high school cafeteria and wait till the start of their cohort. So we know that this pandemic has wreaked havoc, with that. So if someone needs that kind of accommodation, we're trying to do that. In addition to that, the YMCA has made a commitment here, hopefully long-term, where they can have a before and after school program. I know they're trying to staff up, and we are working with them to give them some space in the buildings for before and after school. And we're working on that too. So we're trying to, everything just takes so much time today to get together because of, the restrictions and, responses and so forth. So we're trying to accommodate. If anyone has any questions for the elementary school or the middle school, please contact the main office there, let them know what's going on, and, we'll see what we can do. But we are trying to make some accommodations for parents so we can get the kids in the building.
So I also want to add to the YMCA, they are also talking about an all-day program, not just before and after school. So a child can actually come here and spend the whole day in our buildings and be a remote learner and actually have somebody there with them to help them while they're remote learning from in the building. So that's just something else the YMCA can offer. Board President, we're roughly around $250,000 that we spent with the sneeze guards, PPE, with cleaning, with thermal cameras. Those are the expenses that are associated with COVID to date.
And is any of that reimbursable from the federal government?
The only thing that's been reimbursable, I applied through FEMA for roughly $20,000 for when we were initially shut down back in the spring. We had to bring in a cleaning crew when COVID first hit. I applied for a grant through FEMA. They covered it was around 75% of it. And then with new President Biden, he passed a law. Now we're going to be covered for 100% of it. But that's only a small part of that $250,000. I'd say $20,000.
Jody?
Oh, sorry.
So are we using, now we have the machines in place for taking temperatures in the morning, and that is what we're using? We're no longer using people taking temperatures if they're coming through the main buildings every morning?
Correct. I mean, there are times like here tonight,
Right.
I'm doing it by hand, but we have a thermal camera in our central office, high school lobby, middle school lobby, elementary school lobby. They're on a pedestal. You walk up to it. It's like an iPad on a post. And then down in the kindergarten wing, we put one on the ceiling. We had to do some adjustment with that. The tech was here yesterday because he had it measured for adults and not for little kids. That one's kind of out of the way. It's actually on the ceiling, so it can't get knocked over. So at all of those entrances, students and staff can come in and get their temperature checked without somebody having to.
So we don't have a staff member taking temperatures. We're using that fully now.
We're using that, but there's still somebody monitoring the device.
Exactly.
A security attendant is
Correct.
making sure that someone doesn't come through that has a temperature.
Absolutely. Okay.
John?
Staff has to get a temperature check when they come in, even if they fill out the thing in the morning?
That's correct. It's a two-part process. You have to complete the questionnaire, whether you do it on your phone or whether the security attendant asks you in person those 5 questions, and you get your temperature checked. And then that's anybody who comes into the building.
The other question I had was, did we ever make any progress on, I know NYSET was fighting to get the governor to reimburse the bus money that he directed we bring food to people with last year. Did we ever get anywhere on that?
Yeah, we're going to get that funding.
That's good.
Yeah. That was from last year. That we don't know what's going to happen with this year, but yeah.
So for 2019, we will get it.
1920.
For the end of night, for 1920, yeah, that was good pressure that was applied, and we're getting that funding.
You know, the funding is an issue. We have to stay on them because we're going to need more. Our kids need more. They're going to need more support and help, just the way it is. If we get back to, quote, normal, there might be some modifications too. So just have to keep the pressure on.
I don't have anything to report tonight. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, Mrs. Kelly White.
Good evening. A couple things to share out. So there is a resolution this evening to approve the district's comprehensive improvement plan. And just to summarize some of the key points of that, we had strategic action planning committees that have been working over the last, we started our work in November on the development of the plans, and that wrapped up yesterday. And included in the my board packet, actually in board, was a copy of the plan. There was some grammar errors and wording changed on one piece of it, very slight, after our meeting yesterday. But just to summarize the plan, again, we had to identify 5 priorities that we're going to be focusing on for the remainder of this year. So our first 2 priorities centered around improving our performance in ELA and math. And we understand the challenge of that during remote instruction. So we're relying on IXL, which is a learning program that students can use both here and at home. And we had all of our students have the opportunity to take the IXL diagnostic. Not everyone has participated yet. The principals and teachers are doing outreach to those families, especially those who are fully remote that haven't gotten on board. But the goal is for them to do a diagnostic, which would indicate what their current grade level performance is for math and ELA. And then the program identifies the areas where the students need to be working. So it almost develops an individualized plan to help close some of those gaps in the learning. So we're using that as a tool this year to address some of the gaps in both ELA and math. We have set in our plan, which we needed to set quantitative goals, a 3% increase in overall grade level performance with a stretch goal of 5%. And we do believe that if students are returning into the program weekly and working on the skills recommended by the program, that those goals are attainable. We're also going to be exploring new elementary math and literacy programs and working with instructional coaches from BOCES and involve them in that process so that anything that we do choose to adopt, they're with us from the start and learn how to support us with the implementation of those programs. Our third priority centers around chronic absenteeism. So prior to last school year, the administrative team had developed some initiatives around attendance. We're going to continue to work to make sure that those are fully implemented and relaunch them. Again, operating in COVID makes it a difficult priority to address, but as Superintendent Wiles and Mr. Napoli shared, we do have the YMCA on board, ready to go. The only roadblock right now with YMCA is low enrollment. I think we need to have 22 students, and we have not hit that requirement to run the program, or I think maybe around 15. So I know that there was another letter going out to the elementary parents this week to promote the program, and there's also funding available through the county to help parents with the cost of that program. So it'll be a before and after school program and a full day program, which can be utilized on Wednesdays when we're remote, or if there are parents there that know they need the extra support for their child. They may have opted into remote learning, but realize that their child maybe needs a little more support. The staff through the YMCA is prepared to provide that. So if there are questions about the program, please reach out to Mrs. I in the elementary school. We'd like to get that up and running, and hopefully that could alleviate some of the potential attendance issues that we're having. Additionally, our fourth and fifth priorities focused around school culture for both students and teachers. So in our fourth priority, we want to build a more culture of inclusivity with our students and work on strengthening all student voices so that when we do push out initiatives and programs, we're hearing the voices of all of our students, not just the students that have the skills and tend to be more vocal. Again, with COVID though, the focus right now is going to be more on just supporting the social emotional needs of the students while they're, kind of their day-to-day school-going culture has really been turned upside down. We will be looking to find creative ways to build student voice into that to make sure we're getting hearing from a large representation of students. And we have within the school, Mrs. Matarazza in the elementary school is leading a social emotional wellness team. They've been meeting regularly with the BOCES behavior support team to provide resources and supports to teachers on ways they can help with students with their social emotional learning needs. And lastly, in that plan, our fifth priority has to do with improving school culture for the staff by communicating clear expectations and providing more opportunities for collaboration amongst the teaching staff. Through those meetings that we've had, there's been a need for teachers to have not only collaboration within their grade level, but expanding that K-12. So opportunities moving forward in superintendent's conference day to have some K-12 meetings with the instructional staff, making sure the administrators are giving more support and feedback to teachers on their practice, and using our BLT meetings within the building to improve communication, collaboration, and explore ways to improve school culture and climate. So again, in board docs is the documents which we'll be submitting to New York State upon approval of the Board of Education. The template will be a public document posted on the district website once it is approved here, and we will continue with school improvement efforts next by working on the middle school's improvement plan. And again, that'll be presented to the board for approval once that work is done. That is all. Actually, one other update on PTEC. Work on PTEC has really picked up over the last couple of weeks. There was a letter that went out to the community, I think prior to our last meeting that was canceled due to the weather. But we have some upcoming meetings with the steering committees and just ongoing meetings here internally to get the work done so that our program is ready to open in September, and there'll be communication being pushed out regularly as the program continues to develop.
We also we posted for the new positions for PTEC. That'll
Yep.
be coming to the board in the upcoming meetings, all funded by the grant. We'll be hiring 2 teachers.
Yes, an ELA and a math teacher.
Thank you. I'm going to assert some executive privilege here. I want to recognize our board confidential secretary, Nafisa Doria, whose birthday is tomorrow. She's been with us for 25 years, so thank you for all your dedicated service, and we'd like to wish you a very happy birthday. Sure. We'd sing to you, but I think you'd kill me.
Can I just make a comment about the school improvement? 2 seconds, sorry. I just want to recognize the teachers and the, everyone, all the staff that's working on the school improvement teams. Really, in the number of years that I've been here, I've been able to peek in and look at the work that's being done. And really under Mrs. White's leadership, the support of Dr. Cassell and Barbara Hasty, it's the best work I've seen done. And I really feel that the evidence you'll see moving forward will glean improvement for the district. The teachers are excited. It's not a plan that's going to sit on a shelf. And I think everybody is excited to make, some strides and inroads here. So I just wanted to thank you, Mrs. White. It's just great work. Everyone's worked really, really hard. The teachers on the committees, I really just want to thank them also publicly.
Thank you. We will move on to personnel resolutions for this evening. 6.1, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved that the revised memorandum of agreement between the Ellenville Central School District and the ETS RPA Teachers Unit be approved as attached.
So move.
Second?
Moved and seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
Thank you. 6.2, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved the memorandum of agreement between the Ellenville Central School District and the ETS RPA Teachers Unit and SRP Unit be approved as attached.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
6.3, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved that Mary Beth Quick be appointed as the substitute registered nurse at a rate of $175 per day work for the 2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Willie?
In favor.
6.4, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved that Maxwell Rodriguez be appointed uncertified substitute teacher at a rate of $95 per day work for the 2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
6.5, tenure appointment. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved that Stephanie Baxter, who holds a professional New York State certificate in the area of students with disabilities, grades 7, 12, and who upon completing a satisfactory probationary period ending February 8, 2021, be granted tenure in the area of special education effective February 8, 2021. The awarding of tenure is contingent on not receiving a composite
So
score.
moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Discussion?
Do we recognize our teachers that get tenure in the past, and will we do so for the two that are getting it tonight?
Yes, we did not have our June retirement and tenure recognition
Right.
ceremony, but as soon as we can, we're going to go back to that. And we're going to also include everybody who retired and was tenured over last year.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
Congratulations to Ms. Baxter. 6.6, tenure appointment. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved that Anna Bernecki, who holds a professional New York State certificate in the area of students with disabilities, grades 7, 12, who upon completing a satisfactory probationary period ending February 12, 2021, be granted tenure in the area of special education.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved in second. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
And congratulations to her as well. 6.7, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved that Joanne Winchell be approved as a one-to-one aide to accompany student number 27793 off the bus not to exceed 30 hours at a rate $19.89 per hour work for the 2021 school year.
So move.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
6.8, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved that Tracy Berry and Lynn Gallagher be appointed as academic mentors for the Brighter Futures Initiative program at a rate of $43 per hour worked for the 2021 school year.
So moved.
Been moved,
Second.
seconded, discussion?
I have a question. I just wanted to know, the Brighter Futures, is that a state or a federal program?
I think it's a county-based program with some grant funding that comes from a group in the county. We had put that information in the packet. I'll put it in the packet again, but it's a local county grant.
Okay, thank you.
John?
I was just wondering if this is something that Mr. Mulhern,
Yes,
Yeah,
this is
thank
this is
you.
one of Mr. Mulhern's initiatives. And the next resolution also.
Anybody else on this? All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
6.9, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved that Ulysses Young and Victor Blinoff be appointed as community life mentors for the Brighter Future Initiative program at a rate of $31 per hour work for the 2021 school
So
year.
moved.
Second.
Move seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
6.10, resolve the Ellenville Central School District Board of Education nominate Marla Kaplan to fill the unexpired term of Geneva May on the Ulster County BOCES Board.
So moved.
Second.
Move seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
Okay, we'll move on to budget resolutions.
motion to move 7-1 and 7-2.
7172, we have a second. Reverend Collins,
Second.
discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
8.1, resolve the attached list of IEPs be acknowledged as appropriate. There are 22.
Move the list is presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
Construction resolutions.
Motion to move 9-1 and 9-2.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
Other.
Motion to move 10-1, 10-2, and 10-3.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
Mark your calendars. The next regular board meeting will be on February 23rd, 2021. I will entertain a motion to adjourn this
I have
meeting.
something before we go,
Oh.
Mr. President, Madam Superintendent. I know the district budget is tight, the governor is tight-fisted, but in next meeting, could we turn the heat on, maybe throw a couple of logs in the wood stove, or at least get the board members some hand warmers?
Mr. Napoli, did you hear that?
I did hear that. I will tell you, though, that the problem that we have is that the air handler is right over our heads and it's really loud. That's why we turn the heat off. So we can
want
either,
it on.
well, certainly I will,
I'm just
I've been
gonna make you
having it
aware that
turned
it's
off at 5
3
o'clock.
degrees outside.
I understand. I will have the mechanics leave it on at the next meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting in the honor and memory of
So moved.
Second.
Mary Ellen Guba. It's been moved by Wayne Story, seconded by Jody Little. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Willie?
In favor.
We are adjourned.